Okay, hello, good afternoon. Welcome everyone. Thank you for taking the time to join me today. This is the first in Tutoring as Club's sort of enrichment lecture series. We're going to be talking about a wide variety of things over the coming weeks. One of the key areas of focus is going to be about university choices and some considerations to make if you're looking to study. Today's lecture is on the UK higher education scene. Next week there will be a talk on the US system, the American system, and then in the coming weeks we'll also cover studying in the United Arab Emirates as well. So yes, before I begin the presentation in earnest, I'd just like to go over a couple of bits of sort of housekeeping. Today's lecture is probably going to run for roughly an hour. I'll speak for an hour or so on a variety of areas, and it is it is a lecture which is made up, beginning to target those who are perhaps starting to think about university at 14 or 15 years old, but it also covers, more those who are looking to apply to start in 2021. And there's a discussion about, actually putting together the application and how the application is processed. My name is Alex. I'm currently an academic counsellor working with Tutoring Club. I was based in Moudon when we were out in our centres. But prior to working for Tutoring Club, I worked in the UK higher education sector, the university sector, for over 5 years. I was a senior admissions coordinator at a top 20 university, and my position really allowed me to get two great aspects on the application procedure. And as I say, I now work for Tutoring Club. So yes, definitely a centre that's dedicated to academic excellence. I will be covering a lot of the qualifications that are typically suitable for entry to the United Kingdom during this presentation. And academic excellence is definitely an area that we've been focused on. Tutoring Club was started in 1991 in America, but now has a real global impact. Obviously, I'm talking to you today from the base in the Gulf that we have. But also with the advent of online tutoring and online tuition, we are teaching all over the world. We teach, we teach in Dubai, we teach just up the road in Abu Dhabi, but we also have students taking lessons in Switzerland, in England. So there is a real global impact there. And I've just, at the bottom here is one of the Tutoring Club monikers: learn more, do more, be more. And I think today really is in the do more category there. It's all about how to progress outside the typical school experience, where to go from there, how to move on. And yes, going to university is a big leap. It's a big experience, and it really does help you become something more than you were when you started. So that's a bit about me and a bit about Tutoring Club. What are we going to cover today? Okay, so first I will start with a discussion about why go to university at all, and then I will narrow that focus to the UK. There will then be a discussion about some things that you might want to consider when you are choosing your course or choosing your institution. I will then introduce us briefly to UCAS, the University and College Application Service, and go through some key dates and application procedures there. As I say, I will cover qualifications, which are typically suitable for entry. I will touch on fees and funding. It's a very important issue for lots of people, but it is also a very complicated issue. And quite often you need a fair amount of information about an individual or family background before you can give clear answers. But I will touch on fees and funding, and point you in the right direction of some resources, so you perhaps can do some analysis yourself and understanding of how your position is viewed when it comes to fees. And then there will be the Q&A. So yes, let's start with why university. Arguably, the best reason to go to university is if you have a passion for a subject. If there is something that you really love studying and you cannot get enough of it, and you've learned that from what you have studied so far, throughout your schooling, then university is a great chance to go and study that in depth and spend, all the time you have focused on a single subject area. So if you already have a subject in mind that you know that you love and you really want to pursue it, and that's what you want part of your life to be after schooling, after formal education, it's a great reason to go to university. It's also a great way to discover related areas. I myself, for example, my degree is in psychology with neuroscience. I knew that I wanted to study psychology but the related area of neuroscience was really exciting and developing, and very much still is. It's still quite a junior aspect of the field. And because of that, I wanted to integrate it into my studies. So that's something you can do as well. You know, you can go and study a related area, or perhaps even an area that you know that you are interested in, but haven't had the chance to study yet. Law is quite a common example of this, or architecture, or those subjects which perhaps aren't being offered by your school or aren't generally offered within the schooling structure. University is a great place to really get involved in them if you have a passion for an area. The next reason, and arguably the most important reason to go to university, is to develop some independence. It's a real, you know, it's a way to step outside of the family home and begin to establish yourself in the world. Probably the most important skill you will develop at university is time management, because you'll be managing your studies, your social life, all the other life administration. And that is why I have finances and hunger here. And I tie the two together because they're very important. For many of you, this may be the first opportunity you have to live and work within your own budget. You know, really gain an understanding of how to manage your time, manage your money. And as I say, I group this with food because food can be a great expense, and learning to cook for yourself can really help you manage your budget. And it's also a great way to make friends. It's actually probably my top tip. If you are going to go to university or study away from home, learn to cook 5 or 6 good meals. It will improve your mood, it will help you study more efficiently, and it will also help you make friends. Hungry people love people that can cook. I can attest to that. And yes, it's a great chance to possibly live with others for the first time as well. If you've only ever lived with your family, try living with others. As I say, cooking, great way to make friends. But there are some great experiences that can come from sharing your living spaces with others. In my first year of university, I lived with 12 other people. And then many years later, 8 of those, you know, I'm still in touch with. They were invited and came to my wedding. So, you know, it's a great chance to meet new people. And then at the end here, which is sort of encompassed in the first 2 points, is opportunity. Being a student gives you access to a whole world of opportunities, whether they be academic or personal. University societies in the United Kingdom are a big deal. Universities will have their own groups running around specific interests, whether they are academic or personal, and they are often linked with other universities. There are inter-university competitions or networks. I, for example, was part of a theatre society, which I ended up running in my final year of university. And it's a great way to, you know, meet people who have the similar interests to you. And also, I have started a career here because part of that is the academic. It is, you know, it comes from the studies, it comes from the passion. But I know many people that came to university and through a society actually began to develop their own career. So I know people who now work in radio, who own their own theatre companies. And my wife, for example, was part of a reading group to do with her academic studies. But through that, she began to build a network of connections, and that actually led to her securing her first job after she had finished her studies. So whilst the academics are very important, the networking and the skills and the opportunities that university provides to you are also you know, a key part of why you should go to university. And I also have here at the bottom, build a global network. I mean, many of you living here in Dubai, I imagine, will consider yourself citizens of the world, and so you should. But going to university, you will meet other people from across the globe as well and really build that network. You know, I've been to India, I've been to Italy, I've learned to ski because of the network I built at university. So that's a little bit about university in general and will be true wherever you go. But let's have a look at some of the reasons that perhaps you should consider the UK. The first is academic excellence. The UK houses many world-leading institutions. The ones that you'll probably be familiar with immediately are Oxford and Cambridge, but there are also other smaller groups. For example, the Russell Group is a collection of 24 of the UK's leading universities, and they specialise in having really globally impactful research. So yes, if you're looking to go somewhere with high academic credentials, do investigate the Russell Group and see what they have to offer you. Another thing to say, just to touch on that quickly, is that universities will often also house their own areas of special interest. So the University of Sussex, for example, has the Sackler Centre for Consciousness. There is also the Institute of Development Studies, which is the world leader in development studies. It is Cambridge, which houses the Effective Altruism Institute. So there are all these other smaller groups which exist within universities, which produce all this world-leading impact. And you know, that's why the UK can be very exciting to study in from an academic perspective. There's also lots of opportunities for further study. One of the ways in which success is measured within the UK system is outcomes of degree. And one of the things that universities really try to encourage is further study. So if you are strongly interested in pursuing an academic route, the UK is very open to further studies after bachelor's programs. And another thing to consider is just satisfaction and happiness. So last year, 90% of the over 2.3 million students in the UK reported that they were happy with their studies, which is, you know, I think it is a great marker. It is not a very fine grain analysis, just they're happy. And there is the National Student Survey, which I will link to after this presentation, which will go down course by course and, you know, metric by metric. But yes, the vast majority of students in the UK are happy with their course, and it's a great reason to attend. You know, you could be one of the happy people. There's also a great deal of variety. There's over 50,000 courses available in the UK, far more than the number of choices you'll have had for your GCSEs or A-levels or international baccalaureate subjects. And there's also a great variety of people already in the UK, over 500,000 international students. And beyond the academics, the culture of the United Kingdom is a reason to study. And that 500,000 international students is just part of the multicultural society that the UK has become and has really flourished into. You know, the open practice of religion, regardless of creed or race or background. The UK is really a home to a diverse group of people, and it is a friendly, welcoming and safe place to be. There are also leading music festivals and arts festivals in the UK. On the cultural side of things, the famous one, most famous probably being Glastonbury, but there is also Reading and Leeds, there is Festival, there's the Isle of Wight Festival, there are so many music festivals. And also the United Kingdom, it's actually Scotland, the Edinburgh Fringe. If any of you have any interest in music or art or performance of any sort, you have the chance to visit England and study in England, I highly recommend the trip up to Edinburgh for the Fringe Festival. It is the world-leading arts festival. It is fantastic, and I will revisit Edinburgh a little bit later, actually, because it is a very special place. And it also houses a world-leading university as well. But yes, other cultural reasons, we are global leaders in arts and fashion. There is a big sort of visual art scene in the UK and London Fashion Week and things such as that, as well as international sports competitions and sports in general. The Premier League football will be a big draw for some of you, I imagine. The Brits also love to play cricket, even though the weather is not always the best. And yes, there is Wimbledon, there is the tennis, there is the British Grand Prix, and many Formula One teams are housed in the UK. So what I'm getting at here is the UK is exciting, it is vibrant, and there's lots of variety to keep you engaged. And I just want to illustrate that with a couple of pictures. This is rain. Rain is a big part of UK culture. If you do study in the UK, I really recommend that you get a good waterproof coat, some waterproof shoes, and an umbrella or a brolly. Yes, rain, a big part of being in the UK. The weather in general, always a great topic of discussion if you do meet someone new in England. This is a picture I've chosen for three reasons. The first is that this is a British stereotype, which is true, along with rain. I mean, it's orderly queuing. British people love to queue. My nan told a story about when she was living in the Second World War, and she said to me, Alex, if you've ever seen a queue, you should join it, because there'll probably be something good at the end. And yes, she joined a queue and she saw her first ever pineapple, which I think was something to see for the 1940s. But yes, this is a queue in England. That's one reason it's here. The second is this Mr. Whippy ice cream van, the Super Whippy ice cream van. Ice cream vans are a great part of British culture, not exclusively British, but you know, a great part of the culture. And the final reason it's here is because if you look, you will notice that the sky is cloudy and all of these people are wearing coats. Some people are wearing hats. They are still queuing for ice cream. Being cold, no reason not to have ice cream. And finally, this is a cup of tea. Very British, a key part of British culture. Learn how you like your tea, learn how to make your tea for your friends. If any of your British friends are ever stressed, recommend that they make a cup of tea. It'll help them relax. It's a stereotype which really is true. I'm not just doing this to be silly. But just to go back, I will say one more thing about the UK system on the academic side. It is short and it is demanding. So most bachelor programs are 3 years in length, and there are some integrated master's programs which are just 4 years in length. And what this means is, as I say, it is short and it is demanding. So you can complete a bachelor's degree in 1 to 2 years, less than perhaps you could internationally, and a master's degree again in 1 to sort of 3 years, less than typical, if you know what you're doing and you're on the right track. And that can be fantastic for a number of reasons. It drops you into the world, the real world a little bit quicker. You complete your qualifications, you move into the working world faster. It cuts down on the cost of tuition fee and living cost, but it is very demanding, and it is perhaps not as flexible as some of the systems. It requires you to have a little bit of knowledge and understanding of what you want to do and where you are going before you enroll onto what can be quite a narrow course. And because of that, there is a well-trodden path. There is a common event in England where students will take a gap year, either to earn a little bit of money before they study, just to consider their options, or try and get some work experience in a related field, so they have a bit of a better idea about what it is that they want to study as they go forward. And I will just end with a little bit of terminology that I think will be important for you guys to know and you will come across, and that is the difference between a single honours, a joint honours, and a major and minor stream. So single honours programs are a study, as it suggests, of a single topic. For example, psychology. Although there will be lots of topics within it, the focus will be, centrally on the area of psychology. If you're to do a joint honours, it means your time is split. So for example, psychology with business would be a roughly 50-50 split of time equally. So you can expect to spend roughly 50% of your time studying psychology and 50% business. So, if the topics are X and Y, 50% of time on X, 50% of time on Y. Then you have major and minor streams, and that's like my degree was. So my degree is psychology with neuroscience. The with tells you that the split is not equal. The split, when you see with, will be roughly, 33 to 25% the other subject. So psychology with neuroscience was about 70% psychology, 30% neuroscience with some obvious overlap. So that's just something to bear in mind when you are looking at different degree programs and considering, do you want to study just one subject? Do you want an even split between subjects? If so, look for a joint honours program. Or if you want something that just touches on another area but gets you more involved in it, look for a major minor stream, a degree program with another subject. So that is a little bit about why you might want to consider going to university and a little bit of information about that. But now let's consider how we choose our choices. And the first bit is course considerations. How should you consider, what considerations should you make when choosing a course? We have covered interest earlier, I think, when I spoke about passion and the importance of, really want to be involved in a subject. But the point here that I actually put is fascination. Fascination and what do you want to do in the future? Because studying at university is very intense, and I guarantee you that you will fall out with your studies at some point. You will not want to do them, you will have picked a topic that you don't enjoy, you will not get on with a lecturer or a member of academic staff, and you will come to be upset with your degree program. And that's why just wanting to do something perhaps isn't enough. It helps if you can frame it in what you want to do in the future, but also if you are really fascinated by an area. If there are questions that keep you up at night that you always find yourself wondering about, then that fascination can really drag you through the tough times. Opportunity I covered earlier, but these are some other areas to consider. Working with world-leading academics, research If you're looking at particular institutions and particular courses, who's teaching what? Why should you go and pick their course? Do you know about their work already? If there is a particular academic who you are fond of, or a subject area you are interested in, see where they work, see what they do, see what courses they run. It can be a great way to work with some fascinating people. Other opportunities include going to study abroad. I would suggest that many of you who go to study in the UK will be considering yourself studying abroad already, but really go and push the boat out. Go and explore other areas. You will see many degree programs now within the UK system actually advertising the study abroad year within their title. And if not, it is highly likely that you would be able to integrate a study abroad year anyway. If you just get into a dialogue with that university, ask them the question. It's a really exciting thing for people to do. It looks great on the other end of things when it comes to employability. The same with all the other things about building the global network, the opportunities for friendship. But do consider where you want to go, and don't be too limited in this. Whilst it is true that if you are studying in England, you will be studying in English, and therefore, America and Canada might seem like the next natural choices, or, Australia and New Zealand. It's worth noting that much of Europe actually also teaches in English. In a sense, the language of the academic is English. It is one of the ways in which, the ways in which the West exerts a sort of soft power over academia by keeping it mostly in the English language. So it would be worth, looking at Europe possibly as a study opportunity. Also, for the most part, the English language requirement to attend an English university will be higher than to attend a European one. So, those doors really are open to you. And another thing to consider is if your course comes with an integrated placement year. So yes, that is what it sounds like. Some courses will offer you the ability to go and take a year in industry, to go and work in a related area to your studies. It can be a fantastic thing to do for employability. I know people who went to study within businesses. My sister, for example, actually ended up on a program that was in part run by BP, and BP ended up funding her degree program, taking her on for a year of experience, and then she secured a place within BP after that. And even for those who aren't, who don't go and work for the company that they did the placement year in, it still helps build their network, makes them more employable, builds their experience. And it's also a valuable opportunity to check that what you're studying is what you want to go into as a career. And also when you're looking at your courses, you might want to consider some of the outcomes. So employability is one and network is one that I've also covered. But for some courses, it may be important for you to have professional recognition or accreditation. And yes, do a little bit of exploring about the career paths that you want to look into and see if anything is required. For example, if you are looking at studying a psychology degree, my degree is accredited by the BPS, the British Psychological Society, and that means it is much easier to go and study or move into a clinical setting with a psychology degree because it is already accredited, because my degree is of a certain quality and standing. And yes, that is important. If you are looking to move into a career or into the professional world after your degree, do consider what additional requirements or accreditation you might need. Yes, and we've covered employability and network. And also for the institutions. Choosing your institution is going to be an incredibly important thing to do. There are lots of different areas to consider. The key ones are up here. So one would be the ranking. And just below here, I've got a load of short and condensed titles here, which aren't really any use to you, but as I said, I will circulate the links at the end. So the NSS is the National Student Survey. That should be TEH. The Times Higher Educational Guide is THE. QS is another resource which we've been using, which is about where UK universities rank within the global position. And there's also the Guardian Higher Education Guide. So all of these things are reputable guides that all universities want to be listed in and ranked in, because it helps students figure out where their best options are. Consider institutional specializations. So if you are particularly interested in a given area, you can sort rankings by that area. So for example, where I worked was a top 20 university, but it housed the Institute of Development Studies, which was the global leader in development studies. So that changed the sort of application and applicant you would get for that area beyond the overall league table, the overall ranking. Student satisfaction will be listed in there, and as I have said, employability along with further study is one of the ways in which universities are evaluated. So these are some of the sort of reputational aspects you might want to think about when choosing your institution. Also think about where you might like to study geographically, but what sort of environment you want to be in. So broadly speaking, universities can be divided into two groups. One is a campus university. That is where absolutely everything is within, you know, a bordered area within a given campus. So, for example, your housing is in the same location as your lectures. That has some great advantages. You can wake up at 9:45 and get to your lecture for 10 a.m. if you are in the right location. But you know, you're also located in a student town. Everyone is of a similar, you know, a similar mindset, to an extent, a similar background, and you know, has similar interests to a degree. And it's a great place where you can really enjoy being a student, and you know, guarantee that everyone that you bump into will be, you know, sort of as young and fun and friendly as you are. But it is limiting. It is a little bit narrow. You perhaps will not have access to all of the amenities that you would in a city. And that is probably the biggest, arguably, that is the biggest advantage of being in the city. You're in the heart of the action. You are in an area where there are lots of opportunities which extend beyond the student world. You do have to live in the real world a little bit more, but you know, it is a trade-off that you might want to consider. Are you happy to be a little bit isolated, but in a student's land, a student bubble, or would you rather be in the heart of a city or a town? I'd just like to show you a couple of institutions now to give you an idea of the sort of diversity that the UK can offer. So this is an actual university. This is Keele. Keele is located in the middle of the countryside. It is very calm, it is very peaceful. And yes, that is an actual academic building. That is a building of study. And yes, that is Keele. Keele, a very, you know, a university with a good reputation and a beautiful campus. This is Brighton Coastline. The University of Sussex, where I attended, was about 20 minutes away from here. It was a campus university, and it was located in an area of outstanding natural beauty. It was located in a national park with lots of greenery and trees, but 20 minutes away was, you know, the Brighton seafront with all of its variety of shops and cafes and restaurants. So yes, that is something to consider. If you are, you know, if you want to live on a campus like I did, do consider where you can get to if you want to stretch your legs a little bit. What is on the outside of that campus. This is a picture of London. I'm sure many of you will have seen London before. London, home to many great universities, many of which also have small campuses dotted around the city, which again offers a sort of best of both worlds, where there are small, not gated communities, but there are small areas which are sort of dedicated for students across London. And I've also included London because the past two images, I think, really focus, you know, there is a sense of history to these images when we look at them. And London here we can see has, you know, a great number of modern developments. And I did sort of want to bring forward that whilst the university scene in the UK has a great amount of history and reputation, there is also constant development and innovation, and that is true of the cityscape as well. This is Manchester, another city that you might want to consider. Manchester as well, another world-leading university housed in Manchester. But yes, a site which many of you may not be familiar with, but this is a canal. Canals crisscross Manchester. And it's a really exciting city to go to at the moment because of this sort of repurposing of these older buildings, the redevelopment that is going on at the moment there. And finally, I said we'd come back to Edinburgh. This is Edinburgh, one of the most beautiful cities in the world. It is located in Scotland. And yes, just because you are thinking of studying in the United Kingdom, consider all of the United Kingdom. London, I know, will be a convenient choice for many of you and an obvious choice, but do have a look at some of the other areas. and some of the other institutions. Edinburgh, as I say, has a world-leading university and is really, really a magical place. It's a very beautiful location, and the Scottish people are some of the friendliest in the world. So those are some images. And then it's going to come down to really, you know, once you've considered what course you want, what you're interested in, and you've also considered what kind of location you want to be in, how do you actually make that final choice? And I'll be brief here because visiting may actually not be, you know, a useful suggestion for many of you if you're residing out here in Dubai. But if you are going to the UK at any time and there is an open day or a visit day running at a university that you think you might be interested in, I highly recommend going. You'll get to see the campus, you'll get to see all the amenities in regards to living and sports and shops. Meeting staff and students can be so important. You can also trial some of the teaching methods that they will go through and visit the local area. It was very important for me. When I came to choose my course, I knew I wanted to study psychology with neuroscience. I was quite fortunate that there were only about 20 universities that were actually offering that program at the time, and of which only about 7 or 8 were in the boundary where I could attain the academic grades I needed to attend them. So that narrowed it down, and then I just visited a handful of them whenever I could. And how I ended up choosing the University of Sussex was on a campus tour. I got chatting to a couple of people who weren't actually anything to do with the open day. They were just students. And we had a chat for a while and we shared a drink. And then afterwards I was like, yeah, if everyone is this friendly, this seems like a great place to be. And I liked the course structure. I liked the lecture that I did there. And then when we visited the local area, it really that was the deciding factor for me, the experience of going. For many of you, that may not be appropriate or very easy to do. So if you are visiting the UK, but the university does not have any events on, let institutions know. If you have the time to do a visit for a day, contact a university, let them know the date when you would like to visit, and just see what they say. Many universities have open campuses, so you can just walk around by yourself. Many will have a self-guided tour that you can do, but some will be able to put on, you know, a small, not an event, but, you know, get you in contact with an academic or a student or something like that, will give you the opportunity to see something in a bit more detail. It's really worth doing, and universities will be keen to do it because it's one of the best ways to convert someone from an applicant to a student. To actually have them on campus is one of the key deciding factors, so universities will be keen to see you. And also, one of the possibly unexpected benefits of our current pandemic situation is that universities have some really sophisticated online resources now, and e-tours and things such as that. They've been good for a number of years now, but in the last few months, I think a real push has been put on them, and you can see some really great innovative stuff being brought to the forefront. So yes, enjoy browsing, and as I say, if you can arrange a visit, do so. There is one other thing that I would like to consider or mention when it comes to choosing your choices, and that is what I would probably gauge or discuss as sort of an academic realism or reality, and that is when you're looking at universities. You will be able to see what the academic entrance requirements are. And I would encourage you to do a couple of things here. Number one, if there is a university that you like and a course that you like and you already meet the entrance requirements, or you are in the right area with your current performance, fantastic. Your job is solved. Your problem is solved, there is no problem there. But if the university is asking for slightly higher grades than perhaps you have already, perhaps they are asking for a 35 in the International Baccalaureate, or 2 A's and a B, but you are only working at a 32 or 3 B's, seriously consider those options, because universities will be a little bit flexible with students quite often, and they will make aspirational offers to students. And yes, that I will touch on this flexibility later. But do not be afraid of applying to universities that are perhaps a little bit above where you would typically put yourself academically, because one of the things that we would see routinely within the institution is that typically our incoming students would have grades between 3 A's and 3 B's, but that didn't necessarily correlate with the outcome of their degree program. And that is because you would have students who are perhaps slightly weaker academically at the beginning of their studies, really flourishing in the environment that they wanted to be in, on the program they wanted to be on. And over the course of 2 to 3 years, really making up that slight deficit that they had at the beginning. So that is another thing I think to consider when making your choices. Do consider the academic requirements of those courses, your current performance, and if it is realistic for you to perhaps work a little bit harder, push a little bit more to put yourself in the frame for those places. Okay, let's move on now to UCAS. So UCAS is the University and College Application Service. It is a centralized system, and because of that, all students who are attending university in the UK will have to have a UCAS application. And yes, that is it really. If you are applying to university in the United Kingdom, you will need a UCAS application. So it is worth spending a bit of time getting to know about UCAS and how the application is put together, and the processes to go through. So yes, UCAS is a centralized admission system. All applications must run through it. And there are pros and cons of this system. One of the real benefits to this is that all universities will be listing their courses online along with all of the grade requirements. So you can go to the UCAS website, you can type in archaeology, anthropology, any course that you are interested in, and UCAS will bring forward all courses which are related to that subject area, related to that keyword, and they will also tell you, what the fee is, what the entrance requirement is, where the institution is located. UCAS is a great central hub of information. So that is one of the perks. Another one of the benefits is that it limits the amount of work you have to do. You can put in one application, but you can send it to up to 5 universities. And that means there is a lot of pressure to get it right, but you only have to get it right once. So it's worth taking the time, really considering how to put this application together, what the key parts of it are, making sure that you get it right, because if you do it right once, it can, return to you in value 5 times. That can also be seen as a little bit of a downside as well. Perhaps if you are looking at applying for courses which are slightly different at different institutions, you might not be able to specialize as much as you want to, but there are ways to work around that. And also universities are very understanding that the system is limiting in some ways. So yes, that is the main overview of UCAS. And as I say, it is a great resource in regards to course choice, entrance requirements, lots of guides about just being a student, how to settle in as a student, lots of resources in regards to fees and funding as well. So yes, that's an overview. And yes, I have here at the bottom, some institutions accept private or direct applications, and that is true. But behind the scenes, they fill in a UCAS application for you. And it is really the minority. It is less than 1% of applications go this way. And that is because, the UCAS application is part of the way that in the UK, university growth and admission is monitored by the government. So that is why, another reason that it is all centralized. The take home here being, UCAS is going to be important to you, learn about it. So yes, I will cover the 3 key parts of the UCAS application. That is the personal statement, the reference, and the qualification section. There is a small fee for using UCAS. It is £25, which is roughly 120 dirham. So it is not too much to get your application out to those 5 universities. And I'll stop here for a second and touch on this offer area, because the system in the UK is maybe seen as a little bit different than other institutional, other university systems. And that is because you can apply to a university before you have all your grades completed. So there are 2 types of offer. The first is an unconditional offer. So if you have already finished your A-levels or your international baccalaureate or whatever it is, and your qualifications are complete and you know all your results already, you can be made an unconditional offer. You put your application in, the university likes what they see, and they say, okay, there is a space for you. Your offer is unconditional, you can come, all you have to do is make us your choice. But then offers can also be conditional. And if you are completing your A-levels, for example, in the summer of 2021, but you wish to attend university in the autumn or the third quarter of 2021, you will not be able to complete an application with fully completed grades. You will still be studying. So what institutions will often ask is for schools to predict your outcome. So looking at your academic background and your current academic performance, what do they think you are likely to come out with? And based on that, they will then make you an offer which would say something like, thank you, congratulations on your offer of study. This is conditional on you obtaining 35 points in the International Baccalaureate, or A-levels of AAB. So yes, those are the two different types of offer you can be made. Conditional on qualifications pending, or unconditional if your qualifications are already complete. This next slide, this is the timeline for UCAS, and we're really hitting this presentation at a good time for those of you who are looking to apply for entry in 2021. So earlier this month, on the 5th of May, the UCAS search tool went live. So on the 5th of May, the search tool went live, and that means now that all courses and their requirements are listed online. So you can go and investigate what courses are being offered in 2021, as well as what the entrance requirements are and which universities are, are running those programs. From the 19th of May, so in a few days' time, undergraduate apply will open. This is where you can begin completing your application. I'll go through the other parts of that in a second. And then the rest of these dates are expected, because at the time of this presentation going together, the dates have not been confirmed, and I think there is a little delay with how the global pandemic is developing. But these are the ballpark figures. This is where things will fall roughly. Just do not quote me on the day. So the 3rd of September or the beginning of September, that will be when applicants can first send their applications to universities. So the beginning of September is the first time applications can be sent to universities, and universities process applications, broadly speaking, in one of two ways. The first way is that they will just process applications as they come in. So that is just as it sounds. So those who apply earlier on will get their responses back from institutions quicker, and also the earlier you apply, the less likely it is to be busy. So you will have the outcome, the result of your application in a relatively quick time. The second way in which universities process applications is through a gathered field approach. And what this means is that they will begin taking applications in at the beginning of September, but they will not actually begin processing applications until they meet their first deadline. And there are two key deadlines to consider. The first is the 15th of October. The 15th of October is a deadline for some very competitive courses. It is also the deadline for the universities of Oxford and Cambridge, because they have a slightly different admission system or an admissions process than the other universities in the UK. And yes, it is also the cutoff date for veterinary medicine, dentistry. There are a small group of courses which have this early cutoff because they have a much more lengthy procedure in regards to processing the application. So that's the first cutoff date that some universities will use, the 15th of October. The second cutoff date is the 15th of January. And this is a really important cutoff date because any application beyond the 15th of January expected, so beyond the beginning of January, will be considered a late application. And this is important because part of the deal that universities make with UCAS is that they will treat all applications that come in between the beginning of September and either the beginning of October or the beginning of January, depending on the deadline. They promise to give them fair and equal consideration. So exactly the same criteria will be applied to an application that comes in at the beginning of September to one that comes in at the beginning of January. After January 15th, after the beginning of January, universities no longer have to apply the same criteria to applications. So this means that they can make their entrance requirements more demanding, they can close courses, they can make your application unsuccessful immediately without giving the same reason or consideration as they would have if you'd have applied a couple of days earlier. So yes, these deadlines in October and January are very important. Universities quite often will consider applications after the 15th of January, particularly from international students, and they may be a little bit more flexible for international students and overseas fee payers. But I want to really impress upon you the importance of these deadlines. I really encourage you to submit things on time. It will just make your life easier. And now is a good time to really start considering. As I say, we have hit this presentation at a great time with the search tool just opening, and now is the most important time. The 3rd of June is the last date when typical applications can come in, and you can still be made an offer, either conditional or unconditional, on them. After this date, they will be considered for clearing. Clearing is a process by which universities try to fill any vacancies they may still have or may want to. I will not touch on clearing during this presentation. It is too complicated, but for the majority of you, I hope that you will not need to consider clearing because you will have been applying in this window here on time. And then the 31st of August I've highlighted here as a deadline to meet any conditions of your offer. The majority of you will not have a problem in doing this because your qualifications, be them the A-level or the International Baccalaureate, they will automatically be sent to universities. So you will not have to worry about sending any qualifications in. However, if you are doing an English language assessment, such as the IELTS or a separate GCSE qualification, you will be required to send that into the university. And yes, that is why this is in here. I recommend as soon as you have a result, sending it to your institution because delays around getting results in can alter the options you have for funding as well as for housing. And then at the end here, as it says, be a student. Beyond August, universities typically start around September, October time, and that is hopefully when you will all enroll. UCAS has a much more in-depth timeline with lots of other bits on. This is a very stripped down, condensed, it is the bare bones of the timeline. The important parts are really when the search tool is beginning, that you submit your application on time, and the submission deadline will be listed on the UCAS website, so there should not be any confusion there. Just check for your course. Okay, so that is the timeline. Let's have a look at the personal statement. So the personal statement is an opportunity to communicate why you want to study it and what skills you have, to study the area that you want to go into. Your personal statement is limited to 4,000 characters, which is roughly, on the form it tends to come down to about an A5 side, a side of A5, but it is 4,000 characters, and it is, as I say, it is a place to talk about why you're applying for the subject area. Perhaps you want to discuss about why you are applying for certain institutions, and also why should a university choose you? What is it about you that makes you special? So that may come from your abilities academically, but it may also come from the ways in which you have integrated some of your other skills, some of your other hobbies, other experiences into who you are as a person. What is it about you that makes you special? Also, what skills do you have that make you suitable? Do you have any experience? And future plans are a really good one to include as well, because it shows that you understand that you're coming to university to build skills, to develop skills, and that is a really important thing to communicate. Just at the end here, I also have serious personal circumstances. Universities will be flexible with applicants if they have faced some kind of challenge or trauma, so long as it is serious. one of the things that they will be flexible on is a change in academic structure or lifestyle. And I think that is particularly relevant for the region we are in and the student population here. Sometimes students can find it difficult, moving from one education system to another. And what universities can do in that case is they will ask you for information on your academic background. Perhaps if you have sat GCSEs previously, but you're now starting the IB, or, if you've been sitting the Italian national qualification, the Italian diploma, but now find yourself on an IB program or an A-level program and things aren't quite going as well. You can mention that change in your statement, as well as any problems in regards to your health, be it physical or mental, any changes or deaths in the family. But it is also worth noting that information can be submitted separately. You only have 4,000 characters, and perhaps you do not wish to spend your time in the statement talking about these things when you could be talking about the important aspects of you as an individual or as an applicant. So yes, universities are always welcome to getting little details sent separately. And yes, just contact the admissions department to let them know that you want to send something extra in and if it will be useful to them to have. The next part I want to cover is the reference. The reference is particularly important. It should always come from a member of academic staff where you're currently studying, and they are designed to attest to both your character and your academics. It's really important that you talk to your referee before you ask them to be your referee, because they will have to write about you and your plans. So it is good if you have spoken to them for a period of time to make sure you are both on the same page, you both know what you are doing. And also it's important that you speak to them and discuss it and that you trust your referee, because your referee isn't obligated to show you your reference. It goes privately and independent of your viewing. So yes, it is a good idea to have a friendly but collegiate relationship with your referee. That they have a good understanding of you as a person, but also as an academic, as somebody who wants to go to university. I also put it here because it is very important that your reference is submitted in time. So it is very often the last piece of your application to go. And if you send out your reference to your referee on perhaps January 13th, there is not always a guarantee that your referee will complete the application on time and submit that part of it. And that can cause some problems. So again, I encourage you to consider this timeline and perhaps not knock a couple of weeks off or perhaps a month off. Have a conversation with your referee if your deadline is in January at the beginning of November. Make sure they are ready to submit it by the middle of December. Begin work on these things early. So yes, that is the reference. And your referee is also welcome to put in some details about any of your personal circumstances if they are aware of it and you are happy for that to happen. Okay, so qualifications is the last part I will talk about here. So the first thing that I'd recommend is that the qualifications that you put on your application are relevant. I would check, first of all, the entrance requirement that is listed by your university. And when you do that, you will be able to see, sort of what the university is looking for and how your qualifications match up. So make sure they're relevant. Do note if they are complete or pending, because that will change the offer that you will receive, whether it will be conditional or unconditional. And also if you have any relevant professional awards, list those as well. Perhaps it may be important that you have a first aid certificate or something like that. So list that as well. And as I say, you may be asked to verify your qualifications. I'd like to leave you with Hofstadter's law. This is something that I learned about in my psychology degree. And Hofstadter's law states that it always takes longer than you expect. And that is true of your UCAS application. You want to get it right, and it's going to take you a little bit more time than you think to get it right. But Hofstadter's law also states that it always takes longer than you expect, even when you take into account Hofstadter's law. And that is why I recommend you start these things early, because if you already know it will take you a little bit longer than you think it will take, know also that it will take you longer than that. So start early. There are all kinds of interesting reasons as to why Hofstadter's law is true. But yeah, so I want to leave you with that at the end of this part on the application. I will now briefly cover qualifications. So for the UK system, the most common qualifications for entry are GCSE and A-level in combination. Now, GCSEs alone are not typically suitable for entrance to UK universities. I would go as far to say as that they are not suitable for entry to the first year of a degree programme in the UK. They often represent minimum entry requirements, and those entry requirements often are not flexible. So if you see a published GCSE entry requirement, for example, of a grade B in mathematics, that will often be a minimum entry requirement. And no matter how good your A-levels are, or how good your international baccalaureate is, unless the maths within it will supersede, but no matter how good your other qualifications are, if you do not meet that minimum requirement, you will not be admitted to that course. And that is part of the reason that we pitch this at the age of 13 and 14, when you are starting to look at those GCSEs and begin to push the importance of those core subjects. The sciences, the English, the maths, making sure there is one other humanities or social science where performance is strong, because universities look for these minimum performances in key subjects, but also they will want a group of subjects at a certain grade. So yes, perhaps for the GCSE they are looking for a 7 or an 8 in the maths, and they will not be flexible around that. And they're a demonstration of aptitude. Quite often you will see universities looking for 5 GCSEs grade A to C, or 5 GCSEs grade 5 to 9. It's a demonstration that you can study a wide variety of subjects with good performance in all. Typically, the entrance requirement in the UK is A-level. It is the most common entrance requirement. It is the most common system in the United Kingdom. And quite often universities will be looking for at least 3 A-levels with good performance in any of them, or in all of them rather, with good performance in all of them. But often again, there will be a subject-specific requirement. And if it is listed, it is possibly a minimum requirement as well. So if you are applying for engineering, say, and your offer says ABB, including a B in maths, you need to make sure that you get that B in maths, and at least the B. If it is an A, fantastic. You need to make sure you get what is asked of you of that specific grade. That is a great way to guarantee that you are moving in the right direction for your offer. So these are the common qualifications, the GCSE and the A-level. There's also the International Baccalaureate. It is probably the second most common qualification to see for entry, partially because it is popular in the UK, but is also very popular internationally, in Europe, in America, here in the Emirates. It is a very valuable qualification. It is regarded very highly by universities. That is because it is broad. You have the 3 higher level and the 3 standard level subjects, but you also have, the core of the International Baccalaureate, the extended essay, the theory of knowledge. And these things are all a bit more closely aligned to university studies than perhaps the GCSE and the A-level is. And because of that, it is a very valuable qualification. Again, and I bring this up because some of you will be coming to a point where you are looking to choose what your next educational steps are, and the International Baccalaureate may be an option. There are also BTECs, which are quite common in the UK. They are not very common to the region currently. They are perhaps seen as a bit less academic than A-levels or subjects taken within the International Baccalaureate. But where applicants apply with these, what we also do is we really take a look at the educational background. It becomes of particular importance because they are that little bit less academic, perhaps, in their makeup. But the most common that we see are the GCSE and the A-level, those 2 in combination, or the International Baccalaureate presented as a whole. So those are the common qualifications, and that is probably as well where Tutoring Club has been and is most well aligned to assist you throughout this period, to make sure that your academics, really from that sort of year 7, year 8 stage, that your academics are in good standing, that you start your GCSEs with good momentum, your International Baccalaureate with good momentum. So yes, that is that. A note on the American system, because many of you will be studying the American system as well. Less common to see the American system in the UK, but students are still regularly admitted on it. Universities will be looking for you to have completed the high school graduation diploma. It is evidence that you have finished schooling and did so in good standing, so they'll be looking for strong GPAs across your background in the different key areas. And they will really be looking for, as I say, good performance in key subjects, and it is considered to be sort of an alternative to GCSEs. It is more of evidence that you are able to study a broad number of subjects well. The next part of the American system is the SAT or the ACT, which in America is typically suitable for entrance to college and to begin your path towards a degree. In the UK, that is not as true. Again, I would say that the SAT and the ACT are relatively rarely suitable for first-year entry on their own or even in conjunction with the high school graduation diploma. UK universities will normally look for further study in some way, and the most common way for Americans to do that is through advanced placement tests. And that is because they are seen to need more subject-specific knowledge and require a bit more in-depth study. So what we will typically see is UK universities offering over a combination of the high school graduation diploma, the SAT, and the APs. How UK universities interpret AP results is a little bit flexible. It is definitely worth contacting your universities of choice to find out exactly how they will consider it. And it is worth noting that many other qualifications are also accepted. International students are really welcomed at UK universities, and many universities will have dedicated teams to look at international applications. So yes, if you have any questions, do contact your universities directly. They are the ones who will be able to give you the correct answers. They will be able to tell you if they prefer any subjects to any other, if they're ever flexible around what they term as their minimum requirements, and how to work around the system. And the final thing when it comes to qualifications is for the majority of you, unless you're a UK passport holder, there will be an English language requirement. Many of you will meet this already if you are studying GCSEs or the International Baccalaureate, so long as you have a good grade. But do check with your universities, because universities will also report to the UK immigration authorities. So quite often they are not flexible on the English language requirement. But again, check with your universities that you are interested in directly for the specific answer for your specific program and institution. Okay, I will touch on fees and funding briefly. I apologize, I've run over a little bit longer. And it will be brief, not because it is not interesting or not important, but as I say, it is very complicated and often requires a certain amount of knowledge about your personal circumstances when we come to assigning the fee or the funding. So broadly speaking, in the United Kingdom, there are two categories of fee payer. There are home students or overseas students. Home students currently include those who are UK nationals, who are what they term as typically residing within the UK, and also European students who are typically residing in Europe, although the European section is becoming a little bit more complicated due to Brexit. So yes, it is worth staying up to date with these points and contacting your universities directly if you are a European passport holder. And the fees for 2021 have yet to be announced. But to give you a rough idea, for 2019-2020 entry, which would be those who are starting in September this year, the home fee was £9,250, and that was agreed upon previously, and that is the maximum fee a university can charge, and surprisingly, most universities choose to charge the maximum fee. So that is the fee for home students. For overseas, I have here more, and that is just because it varies wildly depending on the institution and the course. So typically, I would say you are looking at over £20,000 per year. And that will also vary by course. So some courses I know are up to around £38,000 per year, Again, this is something that you need to investigate UCAS, on UCAS and also on university websites to find out the exact fee. And there is always a caveat whenever you see fee statuses. It says the fee may vary annually, and what that typically means is increase. Recently, the increases have been pegged or halted at 2.5% per year, but that may change. So yes, that is the fee, and I'm sorry I cannot be clearer on that, but it really depends too much on your personal circumstance and also on the universities in question. It really is a question for your university. For anyone who is living in the Gulf currently, be prepared to complete a fee status questionnaire. If you are a UK or an EU passport holder and you are going to attempt to be seen as a home student to pay this £9,250 fee, you will be asked to demonstrate that you are maintaining a regular and habitual lifestyle in the UK, amongst other things. It is too complicated to go into now. I will provide a link to UCAS, which is a resource for international students who wish to come and study in the UK, about fee status and how universities will try to assess if you're a home or an overseas student. But it is not something that I can really discuss in a lot of detail here without knowing about your personal backgrounds. But if you want to take a look at that resource and you have any questions, as is true with all of this information, you are welcome to reach out to me independently. And here's a little bit on funding, on scholarships, grants, and bursaries. Again, the take-home message of this talk, really, and particularly this section, is just to ask questions. Contact the university that you want to go to directly about their funding opportunities. Many of them will already be listed online, so I recommend that you take a look on the websites first. But it is worth also discussing things with potential future employers or charities or trusts, particularly if you are studying in quite a narrow area. There are some great opportunities out there. Financial aid is pretty readily available in these layouts, you know, from these scholarships, grants, or bursaries, but roughly only a third of students apply. So yes, it is worth doing your homework, contacting your universities about what is out there, and know that only a limited amount of students apply, and because of that, some of the award rates are actually very high. And typical justifications for awards being given are academic. So academic excellence quite often, you know, comes with some sort of financial incentive. Perhaps there is a particular skill or talent that you have. Perhaps you're a first-generation scholar. So if you're the first in your family to go to university, there may also be some aid available for you. And sorry, for skill or talent, generally music or sports are the two which are most commonly awarded. There's also financial aid available for those from low-income backgrounds, those who are perhaps carers for adults in their family, and also those who need support because they have a disability. Yes, there is typically funding available for any and all of these things. How much do universities care about extracurricular activities? It's a pretty good question, and one which there is no hard and fast rule. And it depends on a couple of things. I would say that universities care about extracurricular activities so long as they are relevant. It's hard to say, because if you are able to tie together what you're doing extracurricularly, you know, what your passion is and what your hobby is, and you are able to tie it together, it makes for a very impressive application. In saying that, there is no expectation that students are doing this, that applicants coming to university are doing this, because it is more, you know, it's a little bit more advanced. It's perhaps something that you sort of expect to come out of the other side of university a little bit. It does make for a more interesting application. They care about it because it shows that this will be a student who will contribute not just to the academic side of the university, but also to the institution as a whole, to the campus culture, to the campus community, and will also you know, enrich the institution and have the possibility of giving back some. So for the UK system, the most important thing is generally the academic. But to have these extra things that you're doing always strengthens an application, always makes it look good. The most, as I say, the key thing, probably get the academics in line, but having good extracurricular activities is a good thing all around. But universities will quite often be hard pushed to justify accepting or rejecting a student based on the extracurricular. But definitely something to mention, definitely makes applications much more interesting. And as I say, and if it ties together nicely, either with your academic area of study or, perhaps the institution you're going for, definitely worth a mention. But probably, not as high up on the list as academic performance and clarity in what you want to study and why. So the next question I have here, so the combination of students doing, if a student has done GCSEs previously and then the International Baccalaureate. For that, to be honest, the International Baccalaureate is such a strong qualification. It is so broad that UK universities will happily accept students with no GCSE passed. It's not uncommon for students in Europe to be sitting the International Baccalaureate, and when you receive an application, you only get information on the IB. You don't get any information on the schooling prior to that. You don't even get reported performance from the middle years program if they completed that. So it is, the strength of the International Baccalaureate is such that the GCSE requirements sort of fall away a little bit. And that is because the International Baccalaureate, it has the mandatory maths element, it will have a mandatory English language element, there will be essay-based subjects in there, there will be a science in there, and all of these things make it a very strong qualification, and because of that, the academic background perhaps is not as important. In saying that though, a strong academic background is always good to have. So it really, as universities, that you can spin these academic backgrounds in any way that you see fit. So you can see a really strong GCSE background as evidence that a student is strong, has forever been strong, and you can say that, given their past performance, I see no reason why they could not succeed here. But you can also say that past performance is no guarantee of future success. So if you see a slightly weak GCSE background, perhaps, but is combined with the International Baccalaureate, you can sort of look the other way on it and say, well, they're doing the International Baccalaureate now, there's a chance for them to be really strong here. Without knowing a little bit more about fee statuses and passport holders, I cannot answer questions on that. I think that is something that perhaps, if you'd like to talk about independently, we can set up a phone call or a Zoom conversation to at some point. And the fees I've gone through are purely the tuition fees. There is no cost of living in that. Cost of living is something which I chose not to include because it will be so wildly varied dependent on the individual and also where they are studying, where their location is. But there is plenty of information out there on cost of living for students in the UK. Again, UCAS has some information on it, but the Times Higher Educational Guide, the THE Guide, and the Guardian, and all of these places will have information on about typical living costs and typical budgeting. So that is that. Just a couple of questions that I wanted to address, which were submitted in advance. For those of you who are interested in studying in Oxford and Cambridge, I recommend that you seek specialist advice elsewhere. The Oxford and Cambridge have a little bit their own roots, and they are separate from each other, and they have similarities, but they are not the same. And it is above and beyond my my typical experience, and I think that applying to university, particularly Oxford and Cambridge, is a very interesting, exciting prospect, and one that you would like to get right. and I would not like to misadvise you. So I would suggest, you know, I don't feel comfortable advising on it. I would recommend that you seek, you know, seek some more specialist guidance there. And also particularly if you can, you know, if you know anyone else that's gone to Oxford or Cambridge and they have a recommendation. But otherwise there are guidelines online that you can view, but it is not something that I feel comfortable advising on. Another question I was asked was just about how applications are processed, and that I think ties in a little bit with two of the questions here. The primary consideration for applications coming in is academic for most universities. They are looking for performance within a certain boundary. Quite often universities will publish entrance requirements, but they will admit students with grades on, you know, obviously above that, but also below that. And that is because it is a way for, really for students to self-select what they think is realistic for them to achieve. And it is a way for universities to filter out some weaker applicants early on. So just to give you an example from the institution that I worked at, we would publish an entrance requirement of typical A levels being A, B, but we would commonly accept students who had 3 Bs and in very special circumstances, B, B, C. And this is in part because one of the ways that universities grow and develop is through the building of their student body. So it is in the university's best interest to admit students who have a chance of succeeding. And yes, as I said earlier, there is a recognition that students flourish when they are happy. And so long as there is some evidence that universities have that students who have 3 Bs have a fair chance of obtaining a good academic outcome, they will admit students a little bit lower than they publish if there is evidence that they can still succeed. So yes, if you are passionate about a particular area of study and a particular institution, but do not meet the exact entrance requirement which is published, have no fear. Apply anyway, or contact the university, reach out to them and say, look, I know you're asking for this, I'm predicted this, or I'm working at this, will it be suitable? And universities will generally be quite transparent with you. So yes, the first is really the academic, and then secondly, universities will look at the statement and the reference, and what they are really looking for is evidence that you have a good understanding of the course you have applied to. A classic example of this where I worked would be our history program was only, you know, what we would term as like modern history. So really from the 1900s onwards was like our particular area of focus. So if students wrote to us talking about their love of the Roman Empire or the Aztecs, it was an indication that perhaps they were not studying or, you know, applying for a course that they had a good understanding of. So that is why the statement is important, and yes, looking for those features that tie an application together after the academic is what comes next, and that is sort of how the application is processed. First, wait to put on the academic, and then see what else the student can bring. If the two things tie together nicely, well then that is good.